Hello and welcome to The Story. I'm Evan Watson in for Blair Best this week. We're going to start tonight with emergency care in Multnomah County. You may remember over the past few years, we led news coverage about ambulance issues in and around Portland. It's been a bit quieter recently. Crews frequently showed up to late 911 calls in the years past, and sometimes ambulances just flat out weren't available to respond. The county and ambulance provider AMR blamed each other for months. Now an update that's mostly encouraging due to a compromise that seems to be working. It's our big story tonight. Ambulance provider AMR is just about in full compliance with Multnomah County standards, a few percentage points off from meeting every metric. A year ago, that was nearly unthinkable. So how'd we get here? In August, Multnomah County leaders and AMR agreed to a compromise. They allowed AMR to staff some ambulances with a hybrid model of one lead paramedic and one EMT, instead of requiring two paramedics for all life-threatening calls. AMR said this change would help them get more crews on the roads, something everyone wanted to see, and it's worked. This graph shows the increase in the number of on-shift ambulances over the last 6 months, from 300 active shifts on the left side to more than 500. And in the bottom of this chart, you can see that number of two paramedic or hybrid ambulance crews working each month has grown from 33 to 52 since August. AMR leaders say this has been a game changer for first responders. Here's Rob McDonald, AMR Regional Director, in a presentation to the Multnomah County Commission yesterday.
Near the end of 2024, it was not uncommon for our crews to run as many as 10 or 12 calls in a 12-hour period. Crews are now running a much more manageable 5 to 7 calls in the same 12-hour shift. This workload mitigation has provided an improved work-life balance for our paramedics and EMTs. We now have the power to mitigate workforce fatigue and burnout, whereas prior to the settlement agreement, our workforce was simply surviving under an onslaught of call volume with limited resources to respond.
At the heart of this subject is one question. When I, you, or anyone calls for an ambulance in Multnomah County, will they show up? Throughout our reporting, we focused on a concerning category called Level 0, a code that means all ambulance crews are tied up and dispatchers have 0 available ambulances to send to a new emergency call. In our investigations, we found thousands of emergency calls that went unanswered, leading to potentially disastrous outcomes. Fortunately, with the new settlement and as things stand, Multnomah County residents don't have to live with that fear anymore. AMR has all but eradicated Level 0 cases.
Prior to August, it was common to have as many as 20 to 30 hours a week where no ambulances were available to respond to a 911 call. Working with Multnomah County EMS, we have been able to drastically decrease the occurrence to just minutes a week, and in the last week of March, that time was 0.
But there is still one area where AMR is missing the mark: response times. The company is required to respond to 90% of life-threatening calls within certain timelines. In urban areas, that threshold is 8 minutes. At last check, AMR is now at 88% compliance. This chart shows the improvement. Look at the yellow line there that drops down into the blue. For nearly 2 years, AMR hovered around 60% compliance at its lowest. That meant effectively 1 in 3 ambulances were late in getting to an emergency call. Still, the improvement since the hybrid staffing change is clear to see on the right-hand side, and McDonald thinks AMR is almost there.
One of the most difficult things is the last 2%. Thankfully that we're working very closely in partnership with Aaron and his team and my team. We're pretty confident that all data points to we should have this thing done.
Multnomah County commissioners and EMS leaders said they were impressed by the improvements, even if response time compliance is still a couple percentage points away. But county leaders still view the hybrid model as a short-term change, with the goal of eventually reverting back to a 2 paramedic requirement. Here's County Health Officer Dr. Richard Bruno.
The agreement was intended by both parties to be a temporary change, a stopgap to allow AMR sufficient time to hire enough paramedics and EMTs to adequately staff enough ambulances to meet response times.
If it is working, why switch back? The main reason from the county's perspective comes down to health outcomes. Key county leaders believe that 2 paramedics provide better patient care than 1 paramedic and an EMT, but they don't know that for certain.
I don't think we can give you a good answer about whether the quality of care has changed between a dual-staffed ambulance and a hybrid ambulance at this point, which is why we're getting somebody on board to be dedicated to answering that question.
Potentially clarity in the future. So if there aren't any major differences in patient outcomes, if that is what we learn, could Multnomah County and AMR make this staffing change permanent, this one-in-one model? Commissioner Julia Brim Edwards is floating the idea.
Is there some impact on the quality of care? Because if not, it's like then we shouldn't be making a more permanent shift to something like this. If it allows us to get more ambulances and speed up the delayed times.
And lastly, there's still an issue of more than $8 million in outstanding fines that AMR racked up for late arriving ambulances. The county and AMR will revisit the settlement agreement, the fines, and future steps in August. So what is going through your mind? Do you think the county should stick with the one-in-one model? Since it appears to be working in this case, why or why not? Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Last night in La Center in Clark County, strong opinions over the battle between the La Center School District and the state of Washington. This all focuses on a district policy around gender and pronouns. More than 2 years ago, the superintendent, Pete Rosencrans, instituted a policy that teachers are not allowed to ask students their pronouns, and school administrators have to report transitioning and gender questioning students to their parents. The Washington State Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction told the school district earlier this year that the policy is discriminatory and must be changed. But Superintendent Rosencrans refused, and now the Trump administration is involved, investigating whether the state violated federal law. At last night's school board meeting, people had strong opinions on both sides. Many parents and community members thanked the superintendent and the school board for standing with him.
I want to thank the board and Superintendent Rosencrans for your work to protect family values and parental rights. I am troubled that a group of staff members who are charged with teaching, reading, writing, and math believe they know more about raising a family's children than the parents. I paid taxes in this district for 38 years, and I want you to know I support you using every cent of those taxes to defend the overreach by a small group of employees and out-of-district citizens who have their own agenda, both of which I know aren't supported by the entire staff or certainly our community.
Others, including a pediatrician and a school counselor, said the policy will hurt LGBTQ students.
Parents don't have a constitutional right to demand schools violate the law. We can't ignore laws we don't like. Parents also don't have a constitutional right to expect school staff to ignore their professional code of ethics by engaging in practices that current research shows are harmful to children. Parents don't have a constitutional right to ask schools to substitute best practices, educational research, and science in favor of partisan politics or misinformed opinions and irrational fear.
Superintendent Rosencrans and the school board published a joint op-ed last week in Clark County Today, writing, "Our policy treats all students equally. We believe it is entirely possible to support transgender students while also ensuring parents remain informed partners, unless there is a compelling reason not to involve them. It is not radical to say that parents should be part of their child's journey."
95% of the cost of tariffs will be passed through to domestic consumers, and that's you and me. It's effectively a tax that all of us are going to be paying.
Oregon's Attorney General blasted President Trump's tariffs both in rhetoric and in legal filings today. Oregon now taking the lead in a multi-state lawsuit challenging the president's taxes on imports. Daisy Caballero has the latest.
Today's filing in the U.S. Court of International Trade is just the beginning of what will likely be a long legal process.
On Wednesday, Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield announced he's challenging the Trump administration over tariffs. Rayfield and 11 other AGs argued the tariffs are illegal and causing economic chaos.
Some other companies say they can pass on that cost. I cannot.
Pat Hubble is the owner of Brooklyn Pharmacy in Portland. It's been open since 1897, one of the many local businesses already seeing an impact because of the tariffs.
Pharmacy drug inventories contain about 60% or more of medications that are purchased outside this country. My pharmacy, we're probably about 80%, really high percentage.
The lawsuit states that the president, quote, has no authority to impose tariffs as he has done, and the court should declare that they are not in force as these tariffs are, quote, unlawful.
And so I'm angry as a parent, as a taxpayer.
This comes a week after California Governor Gavin Newsom and Attorney General Rob Bonta filed the first lawsuit in the country against the Trump administration on tariffs in federal court.
This will cost us millions of dollars.
Governor Tina Kotek held a roundtable last week to address tariff impacts to Oregonians.
The scale and speed at which these tariffs are coming down from the federal government and impacting markets across the globe has created a number of problems for Oregon businesses.
Economists estimate that the proposed tariffs would impact families on average about $3,800 per year, though AG Rayfield says they're proactively working on ways to cut that cost.
You have Congress right now, and I believe Senator Wyden is working on a proposal to kind of cut some of the executive authority that President Trump has. There are other legal motions that we will be looking at, injunction relief down the road.
Oregon Representative Daniel Wynn was also at the announcement on Wednesday. As a business owner, he says he has a front row seat to the impacts of these tariffs.
For a business owner trying to plan inventory, set prices, and manage staff, this creates paralyzing uncertainty.
A spokesperson for the Trump administration says they're committed to addressing this national emergency that's decimating America's industries and leaving our workers behind with every tool at our disposal, from tariffs to negotiations.
It has made we the people feel vulnerable and insignificant.
It's going to be hard on me to make decisions whether I can stay in business. Can I weather this storm? I don't know.
In downtown Portland, Daisy Caballero, KGW News.
Multnomah County is opening over a dozen new sobering beds available 24/7, something the county says is closing a gap in crisis care. The 13 new sobering beds will open next week at the Coordinated Care Pathway Center, or Deflection Center, on Sandy, and eventually be part of a larger facility. It's the first time Portland has had an option like this since a previous sobering facility shut its doors in 2019. Since then, police officers have had limited options when responding to someone under the influence in public.
Now, again, sobering is for 24 hours. Okay, and so that gives us more time to get to know the patient and to connect them to treatments out there. That's the biggest piece that we didn't have in Deflection.
Officials say the hope is that once someone leaves the center, they'll stay connected with services. The larger sobering and deflection center should be open in 2027 with 50 sobering beds. Up next on the story, part one of an investigation in the state of Washington looking at the closure of a chain of drug and alcohol treatment clinics. How it all ties back to a previous investigation from 10 years ago, and what the attorney at the center of it all had to say when crews caught up to her. When the story returns. When the state of Washington closed a chain of drug and alcohol treatment clinics in November, investigators at our sister station found far more to this story, including troubling evidence that points to a specific attorney who was exposed in a previous investigation 10 years ago. Chris Ingalls reveals her longtime ties to many shuttered treatment clinics and the harm that can cause.
So we're just going to walk right back there, okay?
This is the night that started Brett Ryan on a downward spiral.
We'll go back to our office. We offer you the official breath test.
He's accused of driving under the influence in Pierce County. State troopers found cans of alcohol in his truck.
And he said I was intoxicated, but I don't know.
Brett Ryan's arrest in 2023 was his first brush with the law in several years.
He got the DUI, and then I think that set him back. Look at that one. That's really cute.
It was a heartbreaking relapse to Judy Russo, a mother who saw so much good in her only son.
That's a good picture of him.
Nearly every image shows Brett fishing, smiling, having fun with friends.
Loved everybody. Everybody loved him. He didn't have a mean bone in his body.
But her 36-year-old son also faced challenges.
When did you first detect that he might have a drug or alcohol problem?
He was probably about 17.
With that long-term addiction history, Judy was hopeful when the DUI attorney that her son hired, the law firm of Barbara A. Bowden in Lakewood, quickly referred Brett to a drug and alcohol treatment clinic.
It's obvious that he needed help, and that was his way to get it.
Brett enrolled at the Puyallup office of Rainier Recovery, a chain of 3 state-licensed treatment clinics that the Bowden legal team sent many clients to.
They're the pros. They're the ones that should have picked up on it right away.
But Rainier Recovery failed to pick up on Brett's history of hardcore drug use, according to these documents from the Washington Department of Health. Acting on a complaint last year, health investigators uncovered an extensive pattern of corrupt practices. They include falsified urinalysis tests, unlicensed counselors, and an unnamed law firm that wanted clients' assessments doctored so their addiction would not appear as severe to judges and courts.
There's a lot of references in these documents to a law firm.
Yeah.
What was the law firm and what were they doing?
So that was Bowden Law Firm. That was Barbara Bowden's law firm.
Alyssa Keene was Rainier's director of operations until May of last year. She says Bowden lawyers coordinated with Rainier Recovery owner and CEO Jeremiah Dunlap. He would pressure his counselors to downgrade treatment plans for Bowden clients, according to Alyssa and other employees who spoke to the Department of Health.
And then it would be, we just want to make the attorneys happy. And regularly it would kind of just be burned into your head, like that's the moneymaker.
Were you pressured into altering an assessment or evaluation?
Yes.
Alyssa is the only one of 4 former Rainier counselors we talked to that was willing to appear on camera.
If you get pulled over for a DUI, the officer may release you.
All said that the law firm of Barbara Bowden, a longtime DUI attorney in Pierce County, demanded that Dunlap change their clients' assessments to a lower level. There were things we weren't allowed to report to the courts, employees told investigators. A 5th former employee, who had a different take, also agreed to an on-camera interview.
This is Phoebe, and this is Booger. Booger is my emotional support dog.
Jennifer Richards says she saw no misconduct at Rainier Recovery. Even though she was a counselor trainee, not a fully licensed counselor, Jennifer Richards' title was lead clinician.
Barbara Bowden's office never called the shots. We had way more clients that had nothing to do with Bowden's office.
We understand it's a tough situation to be in.
But Brett Ryan's case reveals how Bowden's law firm may have used manipulated assessments to get clients a lighter sentence. A Rainier Recovery counselor designated Brett NSP, no significant problem, requiring the lowest level of treatment.
All rise. Pierce County District Court is now in session.
In this courtroom in January of last year, the judge relied on that report to sentence Brett to no jail time and 3 months of drug and alcohol monitoring by Rainier Recovery, a minimal sentence. Records show he paid Rainier for 1 day-long drug and alcohol class and victims panel.
Brett paid $190 for 8 hours when he should have been hauled off to a treatment center right then and there. I mean, that's a joke.
So why? Why do all this? What possibly could have been the motive? In a final order signed with the state, Rainier's owner Jeremiah Dunlap did not dispute that it was maximum revenue, money, and that he had a deal with Bowden. Records say Bowden's success rates, getting light sentences and less treatment, attracted more clients to her firm. And Rainier profited with a steady stream of paying clients referred by Bowden's firm. Everybody wins, except perhaps for the client. The King 5 investigators made several attempts to contact Barbara Bowden and did not get a response. We tracked her down outside the Pierce County Courthouse. Hello, Ms. Bowden. We're the King 5 investigators. We need to talk to you about Rainier Recovery. Were you telling employees there?
I have to go to court.
Were you telling employees there to alter evaluations, ma'am? Bowden did not answer the many questions we have about her law firm and its relationship with Rainier Recovery Centers and its owner. It's all over Department of Health documents if that's what you were doing. And there's evidence she's been doing it a long time. Mike Harbison is a lawyer who worked for Bowden 15 years ago. He declined an on-camera interview, but told King 5 Bowden would call the shots as far as manipulation of assessments was concerned. Harbison said at the time he was a young attorney and I didn't know how evaluations work. The consequences of improper assessments and treatment can be tragic.
I was laying in bed and starting to go to sleep, and I heard a thud.
We'll show you what happened to Brett Ryan just weeks after his DUI sentencing. And we uncovered that the Rainier Recovery counselor who assessed Brett for that court recommendation is someone we've spoken to before. We've learned a few things since the last time we did an interview. It looks like your signature is on the records there. Does that seem accurate?
Part 2 of this series coming tomorrow night on The Story. The state's investigation into this resulted in little action. Jeremiah Dunlap sold Rainier Recovery. He maintains his substance abuse counselor's license without any blemish on his record. And the State Department of Health says it has no jurisdiction over a lawyer like Bowden. Judges in the Pierce County Court where she practices law declined to comment for The Story. Stay with us. We're back right after this. Big news out of Washington County, where Intel, Oregon's largest private employer, is poised to announce plans sometime this week to lay off nearly 20% of its employees. The news was first reported early this morning by Bloomberg. The cutbacks would follow massive layoffs from last year as the struggling chip maker faces increased economic problems. The company cut about 15,000 jobs in August, lowering its total number of employees worldwide to around 109,000. Intel also appointed a new CEO last month. The company has been the world's largest chip maker for a long time, and it employs roughly 20,000 people in Washington County alone. Bloomberg reports an anonymous source familiar with the plans says Intel is trying to eliminate bureaucracy and streamline its management as it works to rebuild an engineering-driven culture. Around 20,000 jobs worldwide are expected to be cut, but it's not clear at that moment how many of those cuts will be local employees here in Oregon. Intel declined to comment on Bloomberg's reporting, but the company is set to release its quarterly financial report tomorrow. Intel has also scheduled a meeting for all employees with its new CEO on Friday morning. That is the end of our show. Thanks for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of this beautiful Wednesday night and great weather tomorrow. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.